For 27 years, my husband went to the bank every Thursday at exactly 10 in the morning. Not earlier, never later. I could set my watch by the sound of his keys, metal against porcelain, the soft cough he always made before leaving, the way he straightened his tie as if the mirror might accuse him of carelessness. Then he'd lean down, kiss my temple, and say it like a vow, just securing our future, Abby. I believed him because belief was easier than doubt, and because Scott was precise, orderly, safe. He paid bills before they were due. He corrected receipts with a ruler. He hated surprises. The last Thursday began like all the others. "Don't forget Clara's coming by tonight," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. He smiled, too quick, I would later realize. Of course, I'll be back before noon. The door closed at 9:47 a.m. At 11:38, my phone rang. Hospitals always sound the same, soft voices trained to break lives cleanly. Heart attack. Sudden. Nothing they could do. The words slid past me without meaning, like rain on glass. At the funeral, people praised my strength. I stood dry-eyed, hands folded, wondering why I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Relief crept in, uninvited, and I hated myself for it. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Plain envelope. Typed name, no return address. Safe deposit box and ice. My hands trembled. We didn't have a safe deposit box. That evening, Clara spread bank statements across the table, her fingers moving fast, precise, her father's daughter. "Mom," she said quietly, "why does Dad have 3 checking accounts?" "I don't know," she swallowed. "They're almost empty." My chest tightened. "And the retirement funds?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "I can't find them." The room went silent. Somewhere inside me, a door opened, one I hadn't known existed. Cold air rushed in. If Thursday mornings were built on lies, what else had been hidden, waiting for me to open it? The bank vault was colder than the rest of the building, the air sharp with metal and old dust, as if secrets had weight and breathed differently down there. The manager slid the safe deposit box across the counter. "Take your time, Mrs. Hale," she said softly, already turning away. The box was heavier than I expected. That should have warned me. I carried it into the small private room and sat down, my knees weak, my pulse loud in my ears. For a moment, I didn't open it. I stared at the dull gray lid and thought about 27 years of Thursdays, how faithfully Scott had walked through our door afterward, smiling, unburdened. My hands shook as I turned the key. Folders. Neatly labeled. Organized. Scott to the end. The first folder was titled NVSTMENTS. I flipped through page after page of statements, red numbers bleeding through the margins. Failed ventures. High-risk trades. Accounts I had never seen. Hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. "No," I whispered, pressing a hand to my mouth. The second folder stole my breath entirely. Home LOANs. Multiple equity loans, all taken out against our apartment. Our home. My name appeared again and again, signed, dated, authorized. But I hadn't signed anything. My vision blurred. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in. Then I opened the third folder. Credit cards. Dozens. All in my name. Forged signatures. My social security number. Limits maxed. Balances obscene. "Oh my God," I breathed, tears finally spilling. "Scott, what did you do?" At the bottom of the box lay an envelope, thick and cream-colored, my name written in his careful handwriting. A confession, I knew, or an apology, or both. I didn't open it yet. I closed the box instead, my fingers numb, my heart pounding with a terrible clarity. The man I had trusted with my life had gambled with my identity. Hook. What do you do when the truth doesn't just hurt, but rewrites every memory you thought was safe? I opened Scott's letter in the car because I couldn't bear to take it home. The envelope trembled between my fingers. His handwriting was neat, controlled, so familiar it hurt. I unfolded the page and felt something inside me brace for impact, like a body instinctively curling before a fall. "Abigail, if you're reading this, I failed." That was the first line. Not "I'm sorry," not "I love you." Failed? He wrote about one bad decision that turned into another, about panic disguised as confidence, about Thursdays becoming negotiations, then confessions, then desperation. He wrote that he thought he could fix it before I ever knew. I was trying to protect you, the letter said. I laughed out loud, a broken, ugly sound, and startled myself. Protect me? I whispered. By destroying me? There was no life insurance. He explained that too. Premiums he stopped paying. Money rerouted. Risks doubled. Retirement accounts drained to cover losses that only grew larger. By the time I finished reading, my hands were numb. I sat there for a long time, staring through the windshield, watching people walk past the bank doors carrying ordinary lives. I wondered how many of them were standing on ground already cracking beneath their feet. At home, Clara watched my face as I handed her the letter. Well, she asked carefully. It's all gone, I said, every cent. Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. So what do we do now? That question changed everything. That night, I cried for the first time, not loudly, not dramatically, but with my face buried in the pillow, grief finally finding a voice. I mourned my husband. I mourned the marriage I thought I had. I mourned the woman who trusted without question. By morning, something colder replaced the tears. Resolve. Scott had left me ruins, but I was still standing. And I would not disappear quietly beneath his mistakes. When the truth burns everything down, do you collapse with it, or rise from the ashes it leaves behind? Lawyer Darius didn't look like someone who would change the course of my life. No dramatic pauses, no comforting cliches. Just a legal pad, a pen, and eyes that didn't flinch when I slid Scott's letter across the desk. He read in silence. The ticking clock grew louder with every page. When he finally looked up, his voice was calm, almost surgical. Abigail, this isn't mismanagement. I waited. This is spousal financial violence. The word struck harder than anything else I'd heard. Financial violence? I repeated. He never hit me. Darius leaned forward. He didn't have to. He isolated you from information. He forged your identity. He transferred risk onto you without consent. That's control, and it's illegal. My throat tightened. My tears blurred the edge of his face, but I didn't look away. So what happens now? I asked. He exhaled. Now the banks come after you. Foreclosure notices. Creditors. They'll say you benefited because you were married. As if marriage were consent. As if love were a signature. Over the next weeks, my life became paper. Statements. Timelines. Handwriting samples. Every document another bruise I hadn't known existed. One afternoon, a letter arrived stamped FINAL-NOTIC. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, holding it like a verdict. I can't do this, I whispered into the phone. You can, Darius said firmly, and you will. We proved the signatures were forged. We forced the truth into daylight. The courtroom smelled like dust and judgment. When the bank's attorney stood and said, Mrs. Hale benefited from these loans, something inside me snapped. I stood. I benefited from lies, I said clearly, and I paid for them. Silence followed. That was when I understood. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my voice. What if the most dangerous form of abuse leaves no bruises, only silence, debt, and doubt? The judge's ruling didn't sound triumphant. It sounded final. Fraud established, liens voided. Just words, but my knees nearly buckled. The apartment was mine. The debt wasn't. My name was clean. Outside the courthouse, my son stood frozen beside me, eyes shining. So, it's over, he asked. No, I said quietly, it's beginning. Weeks later, I volunteered at a small charitable office that helped people untangle financial disasters no one wanted to talk about. I recognized the looks immediately, the shame, the fear, the whispered questions. One woman clutched her folder and asked, "What if I'm wrong?" "You won't be," I said. "And if you are, you lose 5 minutes. If you're not, you save your life." My son came back slowly. Awkward conversations. Long silences. Then one night he said, "I didn't want Dad to be capable of this." "I know," I answered. And we sat there, grieving the same man in different ways. On a quiet morning, I walked into a bank Scott had never entered. "I'd like to open an account," I said. The teller smiled. "Last name?" I hesitated, then breathed. "My maiden name." As the pen moved across the paper, something loosened inside my chest. Not anger, not grief. Ownership. When I stepped outside, sunlight hit my face, warm and real. I wasn't the woman who waited every Thursday anymore. I was the woman who asked questions. who survived truth, who chose herself. If silence once erased me, then telling the truth out loud became the way I wrote myself back into existence.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.